Okay, if everybody can come in and join around, we're going to kind of start in the middle here. I'm going to start with some housekeeping and introduce Prince, and then we'll move to the back galleries and the back of the Emily's here. I'm going to see if I need this. What do you think? Yeah? Okay. Welcome to the Art Museum in Southeast Texas. My name is Mariah Rockefeller. I'm the curator of exhibitions and collections. We are happy to welcome you to our Taste of the Arts lecture series featuring Prince Varughese Thomas today. I have a few housekeeping things just to touch on before we begin. Number one, again, if you have any bags, food items, water, please do leave them out front. We have gallery stools for you at the front. Please refrain from leaning against the walls or getting too close to the artwork. Really, we try and keep safe. We have one guard on duty, so let's not keep them too busy. And I think that's it. Yeah. If you have any questions at any time, please feel free to pull me aside. A few housekeeping things I wanted to mention. We have in our Cafe Arts series for local artists, we have Thomas Duran, who's here today. His work is in the cafe, so please do see that if you are able to make time. We are currently installing in the West Hall and in the Lecture Hall an exhibition of photographs from our permanent collections for the Photo Fest 2020 Biennial. So those will be up February 22nd with full text and labels and everything, so please do come back and learn a little bit more. I know we have some photography students here. And also I want to mention our March exhibitions opening March 14th and 21st. We'll have Patrick Turk in the front galleries here, in the McFadden galleries, and then Kana Harada in the Steinhagen galleries in the back. So please do come back to see those. The opening receptions will be Friday, March 27th from 6:30 to 8:30, so please do come back. The artists both will be present and speaking. Okay, so now we're gonna get started. Yeah? I'm gonna introduce Prince Varughese Thomas. Prince Varughese Thomas is an Indian immigrant, partly raised in India, naturalized in the United States. He's a winner of the Time-Based Media and Art Prize 7 and a Texas Biennial Artist, and a recipient of the Joan Mitchell Foundation Emergency Grant. And he has been invited to exhibit his artwork and be a visiting artist at numerous institutions, including Ashkal Alwan, Beirut, Lebanon, the Station Museum of Contemporary Art in Houston, the Atlanta Contemporary, the Light Factory, the Queens Museum, Asian Society, Texas, and most recently his exhibition, The Legacy of Narcissus, here at the Art Museum of Southeast Texas, which we hope that you all were able to see because it was really one of our favorite exhibitions ever, really. His work is represented in numerous public and private collections, including the Museum of Fine Arts Houston. He received his BA in psychology from the University of Texas Arlington and his M.F.A. from the University of Houston. He is currently a professor of art at Lamar University, which many of you know. So we're really happy to have Prince here for our Taste of the Art lecture series. If you've been with us for one of these lectures before, you know that we like to invite visiting professors from Lamar University to come give a new perspective on the current exhibition. So this really is wherever they want to take it, whatever their expertise is in, and wherever they want to lead it. So I'm really excited to see what Prince has to say, and I hope you all do too. And Prince Thomas.
First of all, let me publicly apologize to all of you for being late. The best laid plans. I left Houston 2.5 hours ago, and my heart is still pounding because it was one accident after another to get here. So that's part of my baggage. And I want to share with you a little bit of baggage before I talk about the work, which is I know both these artists. David I've known for over 2 decades. He's a friend. Emily I've known for over a decade. I was actually the minister at her wedding. Right? So I know these two artists very well, but I intentionally did not reach out to either one to ask me, hey, what's your show about? I wanted to come in kind of cold and just respond and react. So I'm not an art historian. We have a couple in the audience here, Lynn Logansgard and Stephanie Chadwick, and we have a very knowledgeable person in photography right over here in Keith Carter. So I'm telling you right now, I have, and Director Dennis over there as well. who's very knowledgeable in photo too. I don't have all the answers, but what I want to share with you is how I approached looking at both these shows and what I was seeing and how I was kind of negotiating what the artists were attempting to do, at least for me. There's an implicit agreement I have with any show that I see. And that implicit agreement is the artist is seeing something about the world in which we're living, and they're trying to communicate that something to me as the audience, right? So I take that as the given, from which then I meander in my own ways to try and hopefully get into the ballpark of what they're trying to communicate. I don't necessarily have to be sitting behind home base, but as long as I'm even in right field coming in, we're all watching the same game. So that's the way I approach looking at art. Now, with that said, if I could get y'all to, let's start in David's gallery and then work our way out. I apologize, so let's just take a walk. So there's a number of things with this show, but one of the biggest things for me, and as we're all art lovers, we're all invested in art in one way or another, but you probably all know a viewer spends about 5 to 7 seconds on any given work of art. Artists spend months, if not years, making the things they make. And we spend about 5 to 7 seconds on average. It's really heartbreaking when you think about it, But for me, what this talk allowed me to do is come and see the show multiple times. So I came on days like anxiety-ridden, like right now, of driving in from Houston. I came on happy days, and I just spent time seeing. And it's one of those things, even when we go to openings, we're visiting with people, we're chatting with people, we rarely are paying attention to the artwork, which is the reason why we're here, right? So when I came to this show multiple times, I just started writing words first. What are the words that come to my mind as I'm looking at this work? That was my initial thing. I just want to read off to you a few words from David's show as I was just looking through the initial sort of viewing. So, visual haiku, domestic, art history, space, artifacts, heavy, evidence. So those were the words that came to my mind as I initially looked at the show. I spent time, if y'all want to walk over here, on this painting right here. And the show itself actually gives you a demonstration of a wide gamut of painting, from figuration to abstract to non-objective. So in this show, there's actually 3 languages of painting taking place. And in this case, with this non-objective piece, I sat and I looked and I looked and I looked at this piece. And what I really loved, and this is what I love about when you're looking at art, is how things get revealed to you, right? So in this case, when I'm looking at work like this, I'm looking not only at the overall form, the overall, painterly technique, the overall, layers of paint, but the decisions the artist made. Because if you look and if you spend time with it, you can actually start seeing the decisions of why was one color layered over another? Why did the artist choose to do that? Why did the artist choose to start painting, this red, in certain parts of the image, and then just in essence cover it up? Why did the artist then take this, sweeping gesture with this black line in the upper right? Why did the artist leave these little marks of paint dripping on the lower right-hand corner? So for me, this type of thing, it's a marking of not only the artist's process, but also time. the time invested and the cognitive process of the act of making. And as I'm sitting here, I'm looked over here at the painting to the right, and you can't escape the word pip. And I was like, what the hell does pip mean? We have maybe a literary device of, oh God, is it Dickens, right? Right, little pip, I'm not a literary, I haven't read Dickens in years, but was it that, huh? It's Moby Dick. Okay, gotcha. I just learned something right now. See? So, and once again, as a viewer, there's no right or wrong, right? You just come to it and try and make sense of what you can see out of it. So I was thinking there was some literary device, or it was either, the British expression, of like, oh, that guy is such a pip. It's just like a little asshole sort of thing, right? So I wasn't sure, but, it engaged me. And then this work that's wrapping around us here, was oddly familiar. I know David's work from his figuration work. I've never seen David's abstract work. And, here I started just looking at it, and you can't escape art history when you look at it. There's elements of like Mondrian or, geometric abstraction, but then Malevich really started pronouncing itself in terms of how these forms are coming together. And then I couldn't escape these two right here, because they looked so accessible, so familiar to me. I was like, why do I feel like I intrinsically know that symbology, along with a lot of the other ones over there that are more clear, more direct. And to be honest with you, I couldn't figure out, I was just puzzled by why do I feel a connection to this. And then I finally, this morning before I had left, was when I read the text for the show, the brochures that she has right there, right? And sure enough, there's an image, and it said, cuffs and robe. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, shackles, it makes sense, right? That's why I know this is a familiar thing. I've seen those type of shackles before. And when you think about, David's own history as a black man living in America, right? A person of color, an immigrant, there's all sorts of other things related to his own personal life, his own personal history that he inevitably is bringing into this work that, I'm not sure I'm even fully clued into, but if you look, there is a built-in, and I don't know how the show was structured in terms of layout design, but there's a built-in sort of narrative that comes through. I interpret that first painting there as a gun, right? And so then I'm dealing with a gun to a target, to then these other symbologies. And so I was in like, imagining these various narratives of contemporary culture of a black man living in the U.S. within some of these images that I was seeing. And then I believe the title is Urban Dread, is that right? And then I started thinking about the title, Urban Dread. Once again, a person of color living in America, but also I wondered, because he plays on words, could it be a reference also to the famous Dred Scott case? Right, where Dred Scott, went to court. The Supreme Court ruled that an African or a person of African descent cannot be a citizen of the United States. It was a big case, when he was fighting for his own freedom as a slave, right? So all these things kind of imbue for me within how this thing is played out. And then when you go around the corner there, I don't know if we should move people around the corner. So, do y'all want to walk around the corner? Yeah. Let's go look at two more paintings on you.
Get cozy with each other.
So that painting there with this horse, I was puzzled by. I was like, what is going on here? What is the symbology? What is this face? And then you can't escape the text, Omeros, right? And that, once again, was oddly familiar to me. And I think it might be because David and I are of a similar generation. I think he's only a few years older than me, just maybe a handful of years older than me. And I remember that was a title of a series of this long-form poem by this West Indies writer. He has Dutch descent and Native African descent, and he kind of, in essence, he was taking Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, and he was bringing it kind of further into the present by speaking about British colonialism, which was part of that writer's existence in the West Indies. And then all of a sudden, I was like, wait a minute, okay, this horse is a reference to the Trojan horse at that point, because he's bringing those elements from the Iliad and Odyssey in. And so, there was little things that were revealing in terms of just the content of the painting for me that, once again, David, I don't know if I'm right or not, but that's what I'm seeing. All right, so that's kind of how I saw that painting. And then once again here, you can see little signs, little artifact sort of remnants of things. It's almost like imprints in the ground that are left, right? Like there's a top hat here. There's what I saw as a figure of Buddha, seated Buddha here. This form too is, I've seen it in terms of Far East Asian cultures, that particular form. I can't place where I did. Or this strange five-fingered odd hand. I don't know what it is, right? But it's some marking, some sense of presence, some sense of, I exist here. And then this painting here, if y'all are familiar with the work of Pat Steer, that's what I saw when I saw this particular painting. Pat Steer does these large-scale canvases with these drips of color that evoke a waterfall of one sort or another. And I looked at the date when this painting was, and it's in the early 90s, and Pat Steer was hitting her mark at that time. And I wondered if David had been influenced by her paintings when he was making this. So I was just enjoying, the mark making involved in what was happening here. With this said, I'd like this to be a conversation too, instead of me just talking to y'all. Was there any pieces in this show that y'all were just, wanting to talk about? Anybody?
No, we have one.
Yeah, what?
Here.
Yes.
So I had the beautiful experience to be in front of that painting when I first walked in. And I remember it was just me and the painting. So I get to say hello, introduce myself, and all I want to know is, well, before that, Omeros, I speak to someone, and I don't know, she's not here, but she's like, it's a poem, it's a long poem. And then so we started talking about it. Then he comes and he talks to us about being, reading the poems as he's painting it. And I don't think it had anything to do with the painting itself, but he said he was reading it. But I don't think, the painting captured me so much that once we had the conversation and he talked to me about his process and the years, he spoke to me from his heart, and I responded with my heart. And before we know, we had this moment where we were both very emotional. So all I have to say is that when you go visit a gallery or opening, if something calls you deeply, it's for a reason. And my reason was to have that heart-to-heart conversation with him. So don't be afraid to talk to the artist, because you never know what's going to happen.
Thank you for sharing. That's a great story. Did you chat with them here? At the opening? Oh, great.
Showed up.
Wonderful. Thank you. Who else? Come on. No? All right, then let's keep walking. Now, Emily's show, once again, what I find interesting between the two are both are dealing with history of one sort or another. Cultural or social history with David, and here in this case, very personal history, right? The artist, in essence, in this case, is putting their heart on the sleeve and in essence laying bare their life. And because I know Emily, I'll just wait till we're done. She is giving you roughly the last 5 years of her life, from helping her mom and treating her mom and watching as her mom passed away from cancer, to getting married and having a child. So this notion of mother holds through, a generational sequence. Let me just read you a few words that I had written about Emily's show, which was safety, protection, grief, reverence, absurdity, psychology, OCD too, and play. And her show, it's called Pure Comedy. And she's an artist, she's a professor of art, and she's also a comedian. She actually does stand-up comedy on the side too, as a side hustle that she just loves doing. So, this notion of play for her, I think, is very common in all the work that she does, and the notion of absurdity as well. And in this case, it's the absurd actions, notions, I think, that we do to hold on to things. In cases of grief, or loss, or gain even, how we try and hold on, and the absurdity of trying to hold on to anything in life, because life in itself is so intangible, right? It's like, I think there's a Buddhist expression that says, holding on to things is like holding on to water. The moment you try and grasp it, it just falls away from you. And this whole show kind of, I think, plays in that notion of how emotion and holding on to things is a very intangible, losing process, and there's a comedic part of that, right? The absurdity of trying. In this case, she exposes her personal life in multiple ways. For example, if you'll happen to read the Port Arthur News there, you hear about golfers being hit by lightning. I'm a recovering golfer myself. I was horrible at it, but you hear these stories of people getting hit by lightning all the time, right? And in this case, I think it was her grandfather.
Yes.
Is that it? Her grandfather, that here in Port Arthur. She's a local person. She's from Port Arthur. Or the video piece over here, where it's her and her sister taking her mom's ashes out into the water, dispersing them, into the sea, and then trying to recover it, and the absurdity of the action of trying to hold on. And then there's this video piece hanging, seated on the TV of the artist snorting or inhaling her mom's ashes. How that's, if you think about it, one of the most extreme ways, of keeping or holding on to something, right? We ingest it, we take it in the most extreme way. Now, I am not a parent, I am not a mother, so I do not know all the complexities and worries that parents have, and the absurd things that happen to women's bodies as they are pregnant. And that's what this piece is trying to reveal right here, of when she was pregnant and the hormones went all out of whack, and how hair grows in places you never thought hair would grow, right? And so that's the artists themselves slowly plucking away at the hairs that are growing on their breasts, right? Once again, absurd, humor, all part of her way of looking at the world, her way of communicating something about the world to all of you. We'll go into this little back room. Here you have, once again, in my opinion, some OCD behavior, because I read the silly putty pieces as an obsession of, one, you have to seek out. What the artist did here is they took out where in the Houston Chronicle, was it? Where mom, mother, mama, all those words started being shown, and she would then silly putty or take the language of things she knows as a mom to, take the imprint of these words. In this case, for me, they look like specimens. Once again, in the language of artifacts, like David is creating, in my opinion, some artifacts over there. This is like, if we were, I don't know if you'll still do this in biology class. You used to have little slides and you'd look in the microscope. You also, you take water to see all the stuff that's in water, right? That's kind of the way I saw these, as these specimens, these remnants of, the notion of mom in comical ways, serious ways, etc. And then around here you have these portraits that, for me, harken back to 19th century photography, where you had people who, like the great Western explorers or something, and they take their picture with, their musket or what have you, to show how brave and courageous they are as they're going out into the world to explore. And that's kind of the way I read these portraits, in that stylistic fashion. Like that one there, for me, I have seen a billion portraits of Queen Victoria like that. And so whenever I look at that, I see Queen Victoria. I can't escape it. But there's, once again, when you look at these, there's this absurdity of the notion of protection. How much can we really protect, our loved ones in any way, while we explore the craziness of the world, like even getting here, right? I could have died a billion times, honestly, getting here today. And that, for example, that far photograph right over there also kind of describes this other world, right, that she's living in, where, she becomes this foreigner or space woman out in the world and just trying to live, and negotiate in this strange place. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, how I perceive this show. I started the talk over there with the notion of baggage. And, the beauty of baggage, it doesn't have to be a negative connotation. We all carry baggage. Baggage simply means our life story, right? And the beauty about art is when you spend time with work, right, you're changed. No matter whether you liked the work or disliked the work, you're changed. And you never know, as you're living your life, when one of these things that you see will pop in that will trigger something for you. And there's a real beauty in that as we look. Okay, that's all I have for you. Yes?
So, kind of expanding on that, did you have any particular pieces of either Emily's show or David's show that you personally connected with, or?
Well, it's weird when you've had multiple viewings, different things capture your eye that didn't the first round, right? And that's the beauty of seeing something more than once. In this case, the photo work here, I was intrigued by. The images out front, I was intrigued by. There's an absurdity also in marble, creating a marble plastic, safety thing, right? It's this impermanence. No car could run over that without it being destroyed, right? So there's an absurdity in terms of materials as well. And David's, like that painting I sat with for a long time. Then it was, trying to decode on some level the symbology he's using in all these around here. And then the painting right here on this
question. It's again, more personal for you, but just talking about absurdity and thinking, I'm going to assume that everybody here came and saw Prince's show here recently, but maybe just talking about absurdity with your own work or your own kind of, just because I think that the playful nature of art, right, that how that kind of plays in your own work, maybe?
That's a good question. I have to think about that for a minute. Meaning, as an artist, when I am approaching making work, there's ideas all around us, right? As artists, we have a billion ideas of what we want to make, right? And as ever I'm wrapping up one project, I'll be thinking of a couple of ideas. And for me, it's those places in culture that I find absurd. Those places in culture where I can't reconcile it for myself. And those are the things that stay with me that go, you know what? There's some art to be made within that, which then leads me into my next project. So, in terms of the absurd, in terms of the unreconcilable, yeah, those moments when I'm just living life are what interests me about making art. As artists, we all have different interests in terms of subject matter, right? You could be a still life painter, perfectly valid, And whatever interests you, however you see the world, perfectly valid thing to explore. For me, it's seeking out those places within culture. There's difference, there's absurd that I simply can't intellectually reconcile for myself. Those are the things that interest me to explore. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but... Any other questions? I'm sorry, guys, my heart is still racing. I might have just given y'all 50 million words in a second. I apologize.
I really like your discussion of just how your, as a viewer, your viewer reception of the art, and I think it's really great for especially all the students who are here, because you've just kind of gone into two different shows that might not at first seem totally approachable, and it might seem, like what's going on here, and you've kind of really given people nice strategies to kind of walk in and start to just look. The idea of looking and coming back for more looking are really great.
Well, and that's a very important point, which is, the museum, this massive structure, this very intimidating place can be a scary place for people who aren't that knowledgeable about art. It's intimidating for people that are very knowledgeable about art, right? But remember, as artists, we know we're not going to be next to you standing there whispering in your ear all the things that we wanted, right? For you to get. We know that there is no right or wrong answer to anything you see, right? All we can ask of you is spend a little time and experience it, and whatever you get out of it is the right answer. Other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. I apologize again.
If this is your first time joining us for the Taste of the Arts lecture series, we do continue the conversation, and you're welcome to join us for lunch in the cafe. Prices range. It's not buffet day, so prices range, and you're responsible for paying for your own, but we all sit together and talk amongst ourselves about the exhibitions, about art in general, life, anything like that. So you're welcome to join us. Please stick around. If you are going to join us, just go ahead and go into the cafe. Also, please do pick up a gallery guide for both exhibitions if you haven't already. Fantastic essays in both of them. If we're low, I'll go get more. Also, we are on social media. You'll see Karen Timberlake, our PR coordinator here, is manning our Facebook Live. So you can access that anytime later on. And if you want to come back and revisit some of Prince's thoughts, please do. And also Instagram and Twitter. And then, so yeah, thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.
Oh, my video students, we will have crit still today.